This is probably the most important tip because if you don't do this correctly, you could end up putting someone in the hospital. And that's very bad unless you own a hospital. Meal prepping from home is a great way to increase the convenience, the efficiency, and the quality of proper nutrition while decreasing the cost. Whether you're meal prepping for yourself or for a group of people, there are a lot of ways to do things incorrectly, and that can result in not only getting someone sick, but also wasting time and money. So in today's episode, I'm going to discuss my top 7 tips for meal prepping from home the right way. What's going on, eaters and feeders? My name is Casey, and on my channel, I discuss business tips and tricks, startup hacks, entrepreneur mindset, and so much more, based on my experience growing Florida's highest rated meal prep company from nothing. No experience, no connections, no funding. So if you want to learn more about business, marketing, production, leadership, software, and everything in between, I invite you to subscribe and turn on those alert notifications so you don't miss out on any of my weekly content. Got an opinion on this video or an idea for another one? Go ahead and let me know in the comments below. You'll also want to check out my website, mealprepbiz101.com, and the links in the show notes. The links are chock full of vital information and tons of invaluable resources that you will enjoy. I've got a free ebook, free boot camps, even free software that will run your entire business. I've got private groups, I've got consulting, and a whole bunch of other stuff that will just make your life easier and make it a lot easier for you to start and grow your business. So you'll definitely want to check out mealprepbiz101.com and the links in the show notes so you don't miss out on anything. But now that we've got that covered, let's jump into today's episode.
Welcome to our channel where we go behind the scenes for meal plan company Fit Food Fresh and other local businesses across South Florida. Make sure you hit the subscribe and alerts so you never miss a video, and hit us with any questions or suggestions.
Before we get started, I strongly suggest you look up your local rules and regulations. Cooking for yourself versus a private group versus the general public will all have their own stipulations, and you're definitely going to want to make sure you know what they are. They can vary from state to state, they can vary from municipality to municipality, and they can also vary depending upon the type of food and ingredients that you're going to be using. So you're going to want to make sure you're as knowledgeable as possible so you don't get in any trouble and you don't get anybody sick. It'd also be wise to get a food handler's license or ideally a food manager's license, just so you're dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's. Now, the first tip I'm going to give you is keep production simple. Don't make it complicated. That means keep your menu simple. While variety is great, the more sides, protein, and flavor variations you have can create a bunch of issues that you're not going to realize until you're already neck deep in production. Each time you make a mess, you've got to clean it up, right? So not only is there setup involved, but there's also cleanup involved, and that's going to eat into the time and extend your production, extend your hours. Time is money. I think you know where I'm going with this. Each side, each protein, each sauce, each flavor variation is its own preparation, its own production, and as I like to simplify it, its own mess. Each time you make a mess, you've got to clean it up, right? Cleanup takes time. Time is money, so it's costing you money. So if you make less messes, you do less cleanup, you save more money. Tip number 2 is stick to your skill level. There is no shame in starting in your comfort zone with something that you know you can pull off and expanding from there as you get more comfortable. Remember, you're not selling food, you're selling convenience. Does every dish have to seem like it's prepared in a 5-star restaurant? Hell no. There's a huge market for people who just want something that's edible and doesn't require them to do any cooking, shopping, or cleaning. There's a whole franchise of restaurants that only serve grilled cheese sandwiches, so remember that. I'd rather have an awesome turkey club sandwich than a very mediocre or subpar chicken cordon bleu. Tip number 3, use long marinade times to give proteins amazing flavor. Marinades are a low skill, low labor, low calorie way to increase the flavor of your proteins while also increasing the tenderness and the juiciness. I have almost zero cooking skill, and I can pull off some amazing marinades that produce awesome flavor for the proteins. I feel a lot of people are sleeping on marinades and don't really appreciate them, and instead they rely on sauces and seasonings that increase the calories and increase the sodium just to get flavor. Tip number 4, Give your food time to cool down. A lot of people who are new to meal prepping will plate their food hot, and this is a big no-no. This is probably the most important tip, because if you don't do this correctly, you could end up putting someone in the hospital, and that's very bad unless you own a hospital. Hot food leads to extra condensation, which means extra moisture in your container, and this becomes a breeding ground for a lot of bad stuff, which will also contribute to you losing a lot of shelf life. In restaurants, you're usually cooking food that's going to be served and eaten immediately. So a lot of chefs aren't thinking about all the variables that come into putting into a container, then cooling it, then reheating it, and eating it days later. At Fit Food Fresh, we've got 3 walk-in refrigerators that we use. 2 of them are massive, and they're especially used for cooling down the food and plating under a refrigerated environment. But Casey, what if I plate the food and then put it right in the refrigerator? No. Your container basically becomes a jacket for the food. It thermally insulates the food, which means the heat exchange is diminished. It slows down rapidly, which means it takes a lot longer for your food to cool down, even though it's in a refrigerator. And that means the food stays in the danger zone for an extended period of time. And that's the breeding ground for all the bad stuff I mentioned before. You want to get people sick? That's how you get people sick. If you've got your food handler certification, you already know what I'm talking about. Tip number 5, consider doing 2 weeks worth of production at one time and freezing the meals. While freezing food may not seem ideal, it's a great way to truncate production and optimize efficiency. While health zealots may not be wild about it, most people are just fine with eating some frozen food. Yes, there is a decrease in some of the nutrients and yada yada yada, but you would be surprised how good some food can taste after being frozen and reheated weeks or even months later. And this is all about convenience, right? Both for your production and for the consumption of the meals. The key is preparation and picking the right meals and ingredients to be freezing. Would you want to freeze a salad? Definitely not. Many proteins and sides are virtually indistinguishable from being cooked and refrigerated versus cooked and frozen and then reheated weeks or months later. And the convenience and efficiency gains are what's really most important to most people. Ideally, of course, you'd be eating food that was freshly picked from your farm out back and then cooked by your personal chef, who then cuts it into bite-sized pieces and feeds it to you. Here comes the choo-choo. But for everyone who isn't Jay-Z, a little compromise won't kill you. You just gotta do your own choo-choo or airplane. To each his own. Tip number 6, you need space. No, I'm not talking about the kind of space you told your ex you needed. I'm talking oven, I'm talking counter space, I'm talking refrigeration space, freezer space, storage space. All of that has limitations, and you should be aware of your limitations before you get into production. You don't want to end up with piles of cooked food and nowhere to keep it safely, right? Your fridge and freezer also lose efficiency when cooling a higher volume of food. 20 pounds of food takes longer to cool down than 10 pounds of food. And it doesn't necessarily just double. It may be several multiples of the original time based on surface area and volume and all sorts of thermal dynamics. Look it up. Who would have thought being a firefighter in my 20s would help me run a meal prep business? Tip number 7, using crock-pots and sous vides. Now, while crock-pots and sous vides may not be optimal for several days worth of food preparation, they are great for one-off meals and even something that you make in a crock-pot and then portion out into some quart containers, freeze or refrigerate, and then reheat later. Great way to get tenderness and a lot of flavor while cutting down on your physical time having to be there and actually stand over a pot while something cooks. I consider my cooking skills just above dangerous. If you asked me to boil water, I'd probably burn it. But even I can throw down some yummy chow by following some simple directions and letting the machine do most of the work. I'm not going to say they're dummy proof because I take personal offense to that, but I will say that they're almost Casey proof. And that's the next best thing. If you want to learn more about meal prepping and scaling a meal prep service, I invite you to subscribe and click those alert notifications so you don't miss out on any of my weekly content. You're also going to want to check out my site, mealprepbiz101.com, and the links in the show notes. Again, the links have more valuable resources than I could really explain. You're just going to have to check them out and see what I've got in store for you for yourself. I hope I see you for my next episode, and I invite you to check out my other content, materials, and resources in the meantime. And until next time, I look forward to helping you grow as a business, as an entrepreneur, and as an individual.